Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Tim Donner, Graham Noble, Joe Schaefer, and Dave Patterson. And this is the Conservative Five, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. While the Democratic presidential field grows, the slew of Republican presidential candidates is winnowing. Only 5 made the debate stage last week to sink ratings. Then South Carolina's Tim Scott, a really nice guy who couldn't seem to gather enough enthusiasm for his kind of candidacy, he dropped out. Oddly, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum is still in the race. He didn't even qualify for the third debate. But Dave, as the primary kicks into high gear, there seems to be a lot of bad blood between contenders, too. Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy have taken it to level expert with the name calling. During the debate, Haley called Ramaswamy scum when he mentioned her daughter had a TikTok account.
Sarah, I think what we're looking at is really a new era in political incivility. I mean, you've got Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, mixed martial art champion with 3 wins and no losses, challenging the Auto Workers Union president, the portly Sean O'Brien, to a fistfight during a Senate hearing. And as you mentioned, the demure Nikki Haley calling brash Ramaswamy scum. And don't forget, Congressman the plucky Tim Burchett from Tennessee chasing down former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, to call him a jerk. I think we're looking at a lot of bad behavior, but it's not uncommon among politicians.
I got to disagree with your assessment of demure for Nikki Haley. But anyway, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, but it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon among politicians. Alexander Hamilton challenged Aaron Burr to a duel. Burr being the better shot, Hamilton died. And, the consequence was, alas, Congress was obliged to pass an anti-dueling law in 1839. Heaven only knows what it would be like if that dueling law was never passed.
I think there have been attempts to repeal that law.
I think it should be repealed.
Well, people look like they're trying to just go around said law. But Tim, bad blood appears to be kind of everywhere. And Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley are stepping up their criticisms of Donald Trump. DeSantis, for instance, put a video out of Trump making gaffes, implying he's losing it. And I don't think he is, but Tim, what's your take there?
Well, I think Ron DeSantis is desperate at this point. I think he sees that he's not going to be the nominee and he's not going to be the vice presidential candidate. And in fact, he's kind of fallen behind Nikki Haley in most of the polls. He's not going to benefit from Tim Scott pulling out of the race. But trying to say that Donald Trump is kind of losing it because he's 77 years old, 33 years older than DeSantis, by the way, trying to sort of equate him, well, Biden, Trump, they both, have seen better times. It doesn't work because I don't know about you guys, but to me, Donald Trump looks almost identical to when he ran 8 years ago, which is really incredible if you think about it. But he has stayed the same as much as Joe Biden has deteriorated over the last 4 to 8 years. But at this point, it seems like every single debate ends up with largely the same conclusion, that the winner was Donald Trump. Because every time they have a debate, a poll comes out 2 or 3 days later, and Trump, who wasn't at any of the debates, always sees his numbers rise anyway. And I think the mistake that we've made over time, and I made this as well, was to look at this GOP nomination fight as an open nomination. In effect, it's an incumbent running for re-election. Trump is effectively an incumbent. And so you have 2 incumbents running against each other.
Right. Graham, what are the polls saying? Trump seems to be coming out of the crowd at 30 points or more every single time. But I mean, is this really going to matter in the long run what the numbers say today?
Well, it's interesting to watch the way the polls move around, but I think that the clear message here is that nobody, none of the other contenders really, this is a one horse race, so therefore I guess it's not a race at all. I mean, a Fox News poll which came out yesterday, I believe, which yesterday would have been November 15th, has Donald Trump at 62% among Republican primary voters. DeSantis is at 14, and Nikki Haley is at 11. Nikki Haley's come up quite a bit. She's up in the same poll. She's up 6 points September. Still, she's at 11%. Donald Trump's at 62%. So, I think at this point, it's almost a joke to think that we're actually having a primary contest.
I think the one exception to that, though, is the fact that Trump is under indictment on 91 different charges, and we've never had a presidential candidate who is under indictment or possibly even convicted. And these polls all have a hedge in them where I think it is 6% of the people polled said they would definitely not vote for Trump if he was convicted, though they would if he was merely indicted. So, that's a huge X factor, along with Joe Manchin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Jill Stein, Cornel West. I mean, it's like a parliamentary election, essentially, with so many candidates, parties, alliances, coalitions. It's just a free-for-all out there, honestly.
Well, Joe, let's ride off of what Tim just said about possible the indictments and the possible convictions. I mean, where are we going with that? Is it too early with all these legal issues? Is the fighting back helping? He seems to be Teflon Trump right now, and everything just makes him, more solid in the Republican Party eyes. So I don't know if it's going to help or hurt if they just keep chasing him.
No, what you said is exactly 100% true. We're in the primary season. This is when you appeal to the base. The base feels like this is all a deeply corrupt process. It's reinforcing Trump's anti-establishment appeal to people who are already overwhelmingly inclined to support him. So what's the problem here for Donald Trump? There is no problem in the primary season. I think the most interesting part of what we have now with the primary race, I thought our colleague Mark Angelides, if I may give him a salute, he wrote an excellent article about Tim Scott dropping out. He didn't just write he's a great guy, good luck, bon voyage. He said, this guy's found wanting, and where does he go from here? And that's the interesting thing to me. How long do these guys stay in, and what kind of damage does it cause them moving forward? Tim Scott, to me, is sort of goes on like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio in 2016. He's still in the Senate. He can still do things. But I would argue that Cruz and Rubio have never been the same since they flamed out in the 2016 primary. Cruz is more interested in doing podcasts now than being a United States senator. And Marco Rubio was supposed to be a rising superstar, and he's been very diminished, although he is able to do some things now. So that's Tim Scott's future. But what like Chris Christie, he has no future. He's running because this is all he does. Where do you put Nikki Haley? To me, Nikki Haley is sort of like a Bobby Jindal or even a Carly Fiorina. She's just got a very limited lane, and that lane is closing down on her. And where is her future in a Republican Party that seems to be overwhelmingly for Trump, and she is aligning against Trump? I don't see a future for her. And the longer she stays in, I think it's actually going to, no, maybe not affect her because she doesn't have a future. Ron DeSantis is the big question. How much is he going to be hurt if he keeps going on when he just can't beat Trump? And I don't even have the answer to that question because he can go back to Florida and do some great things, but he is going to be damaged coming out of this primary. He took on the king, he swung and he missed. And it's a question of how much damage he's going to suffer. That's, to me, is the most interesting part of the whole process right now.
Well, it's Trump. There's only one Trump. whether you like him or not. There is one Trump. And when people try to emanate that style, that brash, that in your face, pointing the finger and going toe to toe, it doesn't work out for anyone else.
I think
Anybody
Nikki
who's tried it doesn't work.
Nikki Haley has, at this point, she essentially comes from the neoconservative wing of the party, yes, which has been discredited for a great deal of time. There was a piece in Babylon P, the humor site, which said Nikki Haley, when pressed on what countries she would refuse to invade, could not come up with an answer. And that was kind of the idea, that she's from the neoconservative wing.
I can't.
She's not going to win the policy arguments, but what she's got going for her is that in all of these recent polls showing that Trump would defeat Biden, Nikki Haley wins by an even larger amount. Nikki Haley wins over Biden by 11 points in, I believe it was the CNN poll, whereas Trump wins by 6. Yeah. So she can make that argument, the electability argument, but that's about it. She can't make a policy case to take the nomination away from Trump.
And just the other day, she heard, she was quoted as saying something along the lines of that she thinks that anonymous social media posts are dangerous. So,
and that's basically
right there tells me all I need to know about Nikki Haley.
Now, and she said that less than 2 days after Tim Scott dropped out, which gave her a little bit of a boost. I don't think it was that much of a boost.
Right.
She had things going her way. She couldn't even go 48 hours without shooting herself in the foot. I just find that hilarious. She's really not a good candidate. To say she wants to dox every American who has a private anonymous social media account. I mean, that's a poor candidate in action right there.
But the primary voters don't necessarily agree with you, Joe, because she has risen more than any other candidate since the race began. In other words, Ramaswamy went way up, then he came down because he's such a sort of divisive figure. And DeSantis has clearly gone down. Tim Scott is down and out. But Nikki Haley's fortunes have risen because I think of the sense that in a general election, she is pretty palatable, especially to women. Now, women don't always like other women running for office, witness Hillary Clinton, but women do like Nikki Haley, and that bolsters her electability argument.
I think that what we also need to understand, too, as we look at these candidates and as some pundits say, vying for the vice presidency, we have to remember that in 2016, former President Trump was not a let bygones be bygones, let's choose somebody from my running mate like Reagan did. So I don't think there is a future for a vice president out of this crowd. He's going to choose somebody that he thinks is loyal to him and to his view of the future.
I agree.
Like
100%.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Whatever.
I think that we sort of are presenting this as a vice presidential beauty pageant. But in fact, I think that Dave is absolutely right. I think enough bridges have been burned, and looking at Trump's trying to detect his state of mind. He said some bad things about Haley. The only person he hasn't really talked down much, well, two of them. One is Ramaswamy, who shares his sort of approach. And the other one is Tim Scott, who I'd say from the original field, Tim Scott is probably the only one who might make it to Trump's short list for the #2 spot on the ticket.
Mr. Congeniality kind of guy, huh?
Yes. Yeah, the new Mike Pence.
We had to bring him up. Okay. Well, folks, you just heard tell. The writing is on the wall, according to the best in the business. Thank you, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for Free Thinking, Free Speech, LibertyNation.com.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at LibertyNation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are LibertyNation.com.